Well, as we continue our coverage from here at the 2022 Montana Grain Growers Association Annual Convention, which, by the way, this year, as we've been mentioning, has been jointly hosted by our friends at the Northern Pulse Growers Association and P&W Canola Association. There are a ton of industry leaders within the walls here at the Heritage Inn here in Great Falls. By the way, this week's coverage here on the Western Ag Network airwaves and online is being sponsored by our friends at Nutrien Ag Solutions. And if you haven't heard, they are so much more than just seed. So check them out either in person at one of their many locations across Montana and Idaho and Wyoming and Utah, or visit them online at nutrienseed.com. Well, as I mentioned, there is a ton of industry leaders with us here at this year's MGGA convention, one of which is the brand new Executive Vice President of the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee. The news just broke a few weeks ago. Our dear friend Kent Kupfner. And Kent, you are no stranger at all to Montana's grain industry and the farming landscape across Big Sky country. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what even got you interested in stepping into this ginormous role as the new Montana Wheat and Barley Committee exec.
Sure. Well, I spent roughly 30 years in the commercial grain industry, working for large grain companies in a commodity merchandising role and an asset management type role, for-profit businesses that were chasing market share, chasing being competitive, looking for every bushel. And I got the chance to enter a new phase of my career, still working with ag commodities, working closely with a grower, which is what I was passionate about, wanted to stay in, and step a little bit away from the commercial grain business and work more in a service role with the grower, helping promote wheat and barley, find markets, help fund research, and generally just work with people that I'm comfortable with.
Well, absolutely, and you've been to a few Montana Grain Grower Convention over the years. How does it feel to be at the 2022 version now in this new role?
Well, it's a great feel. I took what I described earlier today as about a year and a half sabbatical, we'll call that. And so the 2020 convention didn't happen due to COVID, so I missed that, and I missed the 21 on my sabbatical. So when 22 rolled around, and the opportunity came up with wheat and barley. Of course, we're going to have our presence here at the convention. And it feels great to be back with familiar faces and friends, and very humbling for as many people have come up and shook my hand and told me I'm the man for the job, and how glad they are to see me in this role. And so that's wonderful. And I feel like I owe it to them to perform and to take care of the growers and serve their best interests in finding markets and finding ways for them to be more profitable.
Well, so much of anything we do in agriculture, Kent, as you know, is relationship-based. And in your previous careers, I mean, everything you did was about relationship. It's like what we do in the ag media, it's about relationships. I mean, that is a tremendous asset you bring to the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee as its new executive vice president.
I think that relationships are important. I go back to trading commodities. It's very competitive and it's cutthroat, but it also comes down to relationships. You get to know the people that you're working with, whether it's a domestic flour mill or an international buyer. And it does come down to price, but there are typically more things involved, and relationships and trust and consistency are all important. And over the years, I made it, I was always, I would say, once removed from the grower in my role. Most of the grower contact with the grain companies was through the elevator managers, but I made it a point to reach out and get to know the growers. Montana's home, and it's a small fraternity, if you will. So I always made it a priority to get to know the growers, whether they're growers in the Gallatin Valley or growers in Plentywood or growers in Kalispell. I always felt like it was important. I kind of into the farm trivia side. I like to know whose neighbor's who and who passed this farm on to who. And when you find out somebody's getting married, I like to find out that, he married their daughter. I just feel like it's important, and it's probably unique to growing up in Montana in a rural environment. And I've carried that through, and now that I've moved into the position as the executive vice president of the Wheat Barley Committee, I'm going to be working and serving growers directly, and that turns me on. I like that.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't go unnoticed. I mean, folks appreciate the fact when you do business with them or you come in contact with them that even if you can't remember their names, you remember something about them, you remember their face, and it sounds like you've got your best foot forward already in that area. Talk about your tremendous team, the staff at the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee, and then of course those wonderful directors that are scattered across Montana. None of this would be possible without the staff and the directors.
You bet. I relish the opportunity with this role, and if they said, we've got a lot of things broken and we need you to come in and clean things up, I would have still jumped in with both feet. But it was the opposite. There was already a good team in place. There had been some turnover at the executive director position, but there was a good team in place. So if you take a look at our staff, it's a pretty small group. We're trying to be pretty judicious with the checkoff dollars. We've got Jason Laird that does our communications and our outreach, and he's excellent. I've only worked with these folks about 10 days, and I'm already impressed with them. They already had a good reputation, and I heard good things through the interview process about the people that I could potentially be working with, and it's coming to fruition. I can already tell.
Yeah.
And then we have Sam Anderson that's on the marketing side, that's working with some of the major grain companies and some of the foreign buyers. He's a young man from North Dakota out of NDSU, and he's doing a great job. So very happy to have him. Then support staff in the office, we have Colleen Spurgeon that does our budgets and keeping our grant process organized. And then we have Tammy Sook that does our administrative. So it's a good, close team. And then as you mentioned, we have 7 directors. And I encourage growers to reach out to the director that's in their district with any concerns or questions. The 7 directors are all first-class people. They're serving their industry. They're passionate about what they do as well, so I appreciate that. We recently, we just appointed a new director, Kevin Bradley from Cutbank, for his district. I don't recall the number, what district it is, but Kevin's involved now, and we welcome him. And he came through the grain growers as well. He's got a lot of experience. He certainly knows growing oil seeds and growing barley and growing wheat. So he'll be a great resource, a good asset.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of knowledge and wealth of knowledge that these directors bring to the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee, and we can't even hardly begin to even describe it. But so much of the time we talk about the policy side of the grain industry and what's going on here in Montana, whether it's the Farm Bill or rail issues, I mean, you name it. But let's talk now about the nuts and bolts of the Checkoff program that is the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee, because there's a lot of important work that's being done on behalf of those producer checkoff dollars.
Right, as most people may or may not know, it's completely grower funded and it's grower directed. So it's completely a grassroots organization, and the money comes from checkoff fees on wheat and barley. And our job as the administrative arm, along with our board of directors, is to make sure that we use those dollars wisely to further our goals of making wheat and barley production profitable and an ongoing profession. So those checkoff dollars are watched very closely, and we try to make intelligent, informed decisions about what research we fund, what trade teams we invite in, what trips we do or don't take to see other foreign buyers, because it's a reciprocal thing. We do need to go see our foreign buyers, and the last few years that has not happened due to COVID, but we'll be jumping back in with both feet and going to see Asian customers. We'll go see the Japanese, the Koreans. We're trying to put that visit together now.
With that just said, Kent, I mean, what are you most looking forward to, now that you're seated in the position and we're about to roll over into a brand new and fresh year, what are you most excited about for 2023?
Let's get rid of the drought. Let's let that go by the wayside. If it doesn't, we're going to all have to deal with that. But I'm looking forward to that, and I tend to be an optimist, and things happen in trends and statistics, and the likelihood of another drought, I believe, is probably pretty low. So we're going to go with that. Hopefully, we've got a relatively good start in some areas of the state of rebuilding moisture profiles. And for me personally, I'm excited to get back in the groove again. Back where my professional passions lie, in the grain industry, and working with growers, working with grain companies, just back to being involved and relevant in the grain industry.
Well, I think the future has a very exciting potential, and I think the Montana grain industry, the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee, is very lucky to have somebody like you that was willing, first and foremost, to throw their name into the hat,
Sure.
to be considered for the position, and to go along with those directors, and this is a very important arm of Montana's grain industry, is the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee. And I just want to wrap things up. I mean, those men and women that serve as directors, I mean, we've had some lean years these past couple of years in the grain business here because of drought. So we haven't had an overabundance of grain to sell, meaning less checkoff dollars. But they take their jobs very seriously, don't they, in appropriating and figuring out what projects to fund, which ones maybe can wait another year or two.
Right.
They do take their jobs very seriously, and they're not spending that money frivolously.
Definitely a good point. And just specifically, we spent the better part of yesterday in a board meeting, and a significant portion of our time was allocated towards setting our budget. What dollars are we likely to have to spend, and where are we going to get our best bang for the buck? And much of our budget is on research, and there's some research we were not able to fund. So we try to take our priorities and say, okay, what is important? Wheat stem sawfly, off the top of my head, very important. Best practices for tillage, or best use of fertilizer. We try to take a look at those, and you certainly lean on the growers that are on the committee for their input. And we do have to pick and choose. There are some years you can be less picky than others, but as a result of the last couple of years, we had to really put some real conscious thought into what we fund and what we don't. Some of those were programs that were going to be new. Some of those we said, let's take a look at those next year when they rebound. Others were ones that were, say, a 3-year study, and we were in year 1 or year 2. We felt like it was important to be consistent to keep that study going, so we funded those.
Yeah, absolutely. And last but not least, I mean, this is the growers program. And what's your message to the grower? I mean, if they have any questions about what their checkoff dollars are being used for, talk about the open door policy at the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee and where they can go to find more information about their program.
Sure, you bet. First of all, I guess I'd like to address that by saying that we have a very high rate of people. Our refund rate is very low, several percentage points. Roughly 98% people are happy to spend that money because they know it's used wisely. But if they have questions, they can always reach out to any one of their directors. Whether they're in Broadview or Plentywood, depending on where you're at. The directors make themselves available. Our office doors are always open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Our website we've got a new website that is very much an improvement. I encourage you to go to that. And our contact information's there. Whether you want to reach out by the old-fashioned way and call us, I'm good with that. Email, texts, about any way. I think we're happy to hear from the growers because we know we're here to serve the grower. So they're our customer, and we better darn well be ready to take the phone calls. So.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, my friend, I wish you only the best.
Thank you.
Again, we've been visiting with Kent Kupfner, the new Executive Vice President of the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee. Again, we want to thank our friends at Nutrien Ag Solutions for helping to sponsor our coverage from this year's Montana Grain Growers Association joint convention with the Northern Pulse Growers Association and P&W Canola Association. For more of our convention coverage, you can visit us online at westernagnetwork.com or check out our Facebook page, and hey, even the old-fashioned way, via radio and television.